5, 4. Oh! I didn't start it. Nazi haircuts. Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to Insurrection with Brenton Lengel, Radical Book Club edition. I am your host, Brenton Lengel. I am a poet, playwright, comic book author, writer, author of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which has been nominated for 2 Ringo Awards, and which is right behind me, Durruti, Shadow of the People. About anarchist Buenaventura Durruti, which there's a very big thing that I'm about to announce, actually, because one good thing is we are actually working with the CNT, the union that Durruti was a member of, to distribute and print the Spanish language version of his comic, which I'm really excited about. And there is another big thing dropping. So keep an eye on this channel and, my various social media stuff. And you will be able to help out and join in the fun.
That's wonderful that they're still around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. The CNT was a very powerful organization, and Stalin couldn't kill them. Franco couldn't kill them. So yeah, they're still around. They're still doing things. Some people are keeping the dream alive. So, Bobby. So, if you guys are just joining now, you're actually joining at the very last chapter of Homage to Catalonia. Am I correct on that?
This is it. Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I read this book years ago. It was very large in my, I suppose, in the formation of myself, like as an anarchist. Like I may not have gone down to Occupy Wall Street if I hadn't read Homage to Catalonia. And the fact that I have, God, this is getting annoying. And the fact that I have read Homage to Catalonia really gives me a unique perspective on inter-left conflict. And joining me is my co-host, Bobby B. of the Mustache Mafia podcast.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I should be doing more regular content. I don't know if I can call myself a podcast if I do it like once a month.
You are a millennial over 30. You are a podcast.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I guess don't remind me, brother.
So Bobby, do you want me to let you do your introduction, or should I, do you want to do it?
You can feel free to introduce me. I haven't been introduced in a while. It's pretty nice.
Okay, yeah. So Bobby is a guy, I met him in one of the many Facebook political groups that I spend entirely too much time arguing with idiots in. Yeah. He joined me for a debate on Modern Day Debate, and I realized he was a very sharp man. And also, you are a 2-time combat veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan. Am I correct?
Afghanistan and Africa.
Right.
Yeah, two other. Everyone forgets about Africa, but that's a whole nother video.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I really wanted to. I'm really happy that we've had Bobby through this because one, he hadn't read Homage to Catalonia, and it's been my goal to incept him into my horrible, lonely ideology. That's right, but
still a sock down, man. You got to keep me keep hooking me up with some books.
Yeah. Absolutely. So anyway, Bobby, we're at the end of this. This book. If you're just joining it now, this is George Orwell's first-hand account, factual, of going to Spain during the Spanish Civil War, experiencing the Spanish Revolution, and then instantly joining up with a left Marxist unit called the POOM to fight fascists and attempt to ban them from life with a machine gun. And for his trouble in this, Orwell was shot in the throat. It's according to you, Bobby, you're familiar with the wound, and it's still miraculous that he didn't die.
It's a 1 in a million shot that I'm sorry, I have COVID right now, guys, so you might hear my mic cut in and out while I cough, so you don't have to hear me sound like Doc Holliday. Yeah, it's rough, but yeah, it's a 1 in a million shot that he lived, because if you look at I think in the video where it happened, we put up the drawing that cop did of the wound, where it's a 1 in a million shot that it didn't hit like his spine or his carotid or his jugular. and just immediately kill him. So like I've never heard of somebody getting shot there and living. I'll put it that way.
And Orwell did, which just goes
Yeah.
to show just what a tough son of a bitch he was. All right, and by the way, guys, so if you guys are chatting in the chat, please continue to do that. I may or may not get to them until the end of the video. Sometimes I'll bring it up, especially like when we're just shooting the shit. But I've had Bobby reading this book and taking notes for I think over a year now.
About a year, yeah.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm just so happy about it. I'm also happy that I haven't had to actually do any work because I already read the book years ago and still have not been able to find my copy in like my moving. I know it's here somewhere, but like there's like 100 boxes and it's clearly not in the ones that I think it's in.
The PDF is free on the internet if anyone listening to this is financially strapped and wants to read it.
Yep, absolutely. So this is the very last chapter. Now, just to, I'll tell you what, set the scene for us, Bobby. What has happened so far? What happened overall, and then what happened in the immediate chapter previous to this one?
So as you set up earlier, George Orwell came to Spain to be a newspaper reporter and kind of write for left-wing magazines and periodicals back in Britain about the civil war against fascism in Spain. And instead, he enlisted in the POUM militia, wound up being a frontline militia fighter, and got shot in the throat. And that catches up to about where we are, because as he gets shot in the throat and comes out of the hospital, his militia is deemed a counter-revolutionary fifth columnist fascist organization. Where what are the other 4 columns? I've never figured that one out.
I don't know. The 5th column, it's weird too because I've done some work with Bo of the 5th column.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah. But though I knew him by his real name before that, and before he was Bo, or at least before Bo got discovered. And I remember like a friend of mine's like, "Oh, you got to write for this 5th column." And I'm like, "What, the 5th column?" Because I'd only heard of it in the context of secret fascist army on the leftist side.
Right. They used it during the Red Scare too. That American communists were part of a Bolshevik 5th column that was going to overthrow the state. Anyway, his militias declared a 5th columnist organization suppressed. Everybody he knows is getting arrested. He's worried he's going to get arrested. The entire political movement that he was involved in is now considered suppressed, even though he was kind of a war tourist in this, but he's still associated with them. There's actually some minor fighting in Barcelona between the POUM and the central government, and the anarchists and the central government, which has died down now. But even though it's died down, Orwell is still associated with a suppressed organization, has no idea where to go, and he's about to start living like a crust punk.
Yeah. Now, by the way, it's important for you guys to understand this, why the POUM was deemed to be a secret fascist organization. And that is because the POUM, not at the time during the Spanish Civil War, but originally when it founded, it was a Trotskyist party. Trotsky was then, chased out of Russia, eventually winding up in Mexico, which is the only country that actually gave a shit about the Spanish Republic against the fascists. Mexico represented like hell in this, and in fact, getting Mexican ammunition was highly sought after because all the other ammunition that they had access to were old and very poorly stored. The only source of weapons were the weapons that the anarchists themselves had taken when they had defeated the fascist uprising in the north. But they had no heavy artillery, no tanks, no aircraft. And so when all the other liberal nations abandoned Spain to the fascists, including the United States of America, Great Britain, France, no one would even sell Spain weapons. One nation, besides Mexico, came in, and that was the USSR.
Which had a slightly larger weapons industry than Mexico did at the time.
Absolutely. And at this point, Stalin had taken over, and he was, spoiling for a scrap with Mussolini and Hitler. So in a lot of ways, the Spanish Civil War was sort of a prefiguration of World War II. And there is somewhat of a case that can be made that if the Republican Spain had won, And instead of the fascists, we might not have even had World War II at all. Because it would have functioned as a check on fascist power. And it is possible that non-violently or less violently, people like Hitler and Mussolini could have been removed from power. I'm not going to say for sure that would have happened, but that is just one of the things that you need to understand how important this war was. In a lot of ways, also, one of the reasons Italians, and I can say this because I was born in Italy, was dual citizen, so like Italians have a reputation of being terrible soldiers, just awful. I think there's even like some sort of a saying, I forget which language it's in, but it's basically Italians can't fight.
Yeah,
Part of the reason why they got beat so hard in World War II was Mussolini had thrown a ton of troops to help out Francisco Franco. So Mussolini had provided thousands of legionnaires as he was trying to rebuild the new Roman Empire. And Hitler had provided, among other things, the German Condor Legion, which is the air unit that famously destroyed Guernica with firebombs. And then Hitler used them and the propaganda of that. Like when he went to meet with Austria to see if he was going to take over Austria without a fight, he brought the head of the German Condor Legion with him as a not so subtle message to the Austrian government as to what would happen if they didn't roll over for him. So, this is essentially what we've got here to set the stage. Is we have an army of anarchists that have done the impossible. The feat that, in my opinion, I don't think has ever been equaled in modern military history, in that a civilian force armed with handmade bombs and antique rifles stopped the fascist war machine dead in its tracks. The people of Barcelona, alongside with the CNT-FI, wound up essentially decisively defeating the professional mechanized Spanish army, and not just defeating them. This isn't like an Afghanistan situation where they held out so long the guys had to give up and go away. It's not an insurgency in Iraq style situation. This is like they defeated the military, took the general who was commanding the thing hostage, and then put him on trial and executed him. And then Durruti took an army of somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 anarchists to fight Franco in Madrid. That's what my comic is about. Definitely check it out. But anyway, so that's where we are. Stalin, and this is very important. So the Republic at this point, they have a ton of money. Spain is one of the richest countries in the world at this point because they had avoided World War I and they still had all of their gold from their old empire.
The gold from the old empire actually largely vanished during the Habsburg Wars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's this whole thing where they don't know where all that gold went because they were spending so much on tertios and stuff. Huh. There's a really cool book called Ala Triste that you should read. What made them economically boom right after World War I is that they were selling guns to everybody during World War I because everybody's war industries were overworked, so the Spanish were just cranking them out for everybody else.
Oh. So it wasn't the conquistador gold. This was arms smuggling gold. Wow.
Yeah. That conquistador gold was long since looted.
Okay, yeah. Good to know. Good to know. Here I was thinking it was what is that? The Johnny Depp movie. Here I'm thinking it's Pirates of the Caribbean, and there's a chest full of Aztec gold with skulls on it, and you ruined that for me, Bobby.
I'm sorry. Well, there's a really cool Sharp's Rifles episode that you can watch called The Aztecs, where he fights conquistadors over Aztec gold during the Napoleonic invasion. I'll send it to you afterwards.
You should, at some point, you should do the historical D&D game with us.
Yeah, I'd love to, man.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm doing, by the way, guys. I'm actually playing one of my personal heroes, Buenaventura Durruti, in a time-traveling Dungeons & Dragons game, along with Nikola Tesla, Lord Byron, who's the other two? It's Nikola Tesla, Lord Byron, Buenaventura Durruti, and also Russian guy, giant penis, dead, extremely
Rasputin.
Dead. Rasputin.
I got it from Dead for the record.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm doing that. You guys can check that out. We'll have to have Bobby pick one of his favorite.
It'll be Michael.
History.
It'll be Michael Collins, and I'll make a lot of jokes that you guys won't get from the movie.
Oh man, that'll be cool.
Riddling him? What do you mean riddling him? If you see the
yeah, you're right. I don't get that.
Oh, the IRA was famously short. I'm sorry, guys, but the IRA was famously short of bullets. So he would get angry if they assassinated an Englishman and they used too many bullets. They put it in the movie where these guys like just utterly wipe out this Englishman with like 50, 60 bullets to the chest. And he's like, riddling him? Why are you riddling him for? One bullet.
Because, amateurs talk about tactics in war and professionals talk about logistics.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly correct. You learned that one from me from this series.
Indeed, I did. I've learned a lot from you, Bobby. So anyway, that's kind of the thing. At this point, early in the war, first year and a half or so, the only reason that the fascists haven't conquered the country are the anarchists. And the anarchist militias are holding the line against the fascists. And while in the back, they are carrying out a social revolution. A state of affairs that George Orwell instantly recognized as, quote, a state of affairs worth fighting for. And he kind of accidentally joined the POUM, which was like a left Marxist organization. So not Marx-Leninist, not Stalinist, used to be Trotskyist, but then kind of decided they didn't like Trotsky and were going to do their own thing. So I would really consider the POUM ultra-leftists in that sense, because they were still Marxists, but they weren't part of the USSR's constellation of Marxist ideology. Now, this is important because no one will aid Spain. No one will sell them weapons to fight the fascists with, even though the fascists themselves are getting aid from Hitler, Mussolini, and Shell and Texaco. Yeah. Texaco in particular, that in defiance of a neutrality policy, like an actual law that against giving any kind of aid to either side, gave Franco all of the oil that he needed to run his war machine. Like without Texaco, he would have lost. So anyway, that's the situation they're in. The fascists have a professional army. They have millions and millions of pesetas, and they have the backing of two of the worst fascist nations in the history of the world. And they are going up against a bunch of ragtag anarchists, union members, farmers, factory workers, and peasants. And the peasants and the anarchists beat them. So that's what comes in. But the problem is, of course, with the Condor Legion, with all of this weapon, with his giant war machine, the anarchists had no ability to meet him with anything other than small arms. And as a result, what wound up happening was that Stalin came in secretly. It was obvious. Everybody knew that Russia was there, but initially they sent KGB guys in uniforms without the patches on to work as military advisors. When he did this, the PSUC, which is the Marxist Party of Catalonia, Stalinists, they were a very minor political party, but then gained a ton of power and prestige because they had the backing of the USSR. And so suddenly tanks, cannons, airplanes, everything that they need to fight a modern war is coming in. And in exchange, Stalin asks for nothing more than all of the gold in the Bank of Spain.
It's kind of curious what happened when he started supplying them with those weapons. Is that when we think of World War II, we think of fascist armored vehicles being the ones that are in the late war. So you're thinking of Tigers and Panthers and Jaeger Panthers and all these other monstrous tank machines, but the left factions in the Spanish Civil War, the Republic, actually had a significant armor advantage at one point during the Civil War, because they actually got something along the lines of 250 to 300 T-26s and a few BT-5s, which were light Soviet tanks, and they were only opposed by Panzer Is and L335s, which were basically machine gun carriers that the fascists had. So it kind of was a test bed for armored warfare, and it kind of showed you the value of a battle tank versus a machine gun carrier. But curiously, they got stopped because the fascists learned the value of having anti-tank guns, which wound up stopping the majority of those light tanks.
Yeah.
Which would carry on into World War II. It's just a curious little military history trivia fact for you guys.
Absolutely. So anyway, that's setting the scene. I don't know why I did it, because I figure if you're following this podcast, you've already heard this, but I really want to make it sure, because I feel like people really, they tend to, if they're watching something, they'll watch the first episode of something and the last episode of something, and supposed to go through everything. So that's what's important to understand about this period. What we have seen happen is that after Orwell is shot in the throat at the front, he goes behind the lines, he recovers, and manages to make it back to Barcelona, which is the center of anarchist power. But at this point, this is when the PSUC, with the backing of the USSR, has proceeded to suppress all of its opposition. The first one they went after were the POUM, because the POUM were Trotskyists, which meant they were social fascists, which meant they are Franco's fifth column, and they are secretly working to help a fascist victory. It's this crazy ship of Theseus argument, where it's like, okay, you were associated with a guy we don't like at one time, and because we don't like that guy, yeah, sure, he's a fascist, and that makes you guys fascists, and even though you still don't like that guy, you're not with us, you're with them, so we're going to suppress you. After they suppressed the POUM, the former Trotskyists, now ultra-leftists, they then turned their sights on the anarchists, which was the strongest faction out of everyone, between like the liberals, the Marxists, and the anarchists. The anarchists, when the Stalinists attacked their own allies, under the pretext of forcing military efficiency, which is fucking hilarious, what they wound up doing was, the anarchists probably could have fought back and won, even with because the PSUC, while they had the backing of the Soviets, there weren't a ton of Russian soldiers there, and there weren't very many members of this particular political party. What they did have was, again, backing and weapons. And so if the anarchists had fought them, gone back to the city, like what would have happened was the fascists would have advanced and they would have taken the whole country by the time the anarchists managed to defeat Stalin and take whatever weapons they would have needed. So the anarchists decided to hold the line against the fascists and hope that the left would sort itself out and that they could continue to function as allies against the fascists. Stalin didn't think that. And so, after he had all of the gold from the Bank of Spain, he suppressed everyone who wasn't him in the name of military efficiency, function as an anti-revolutionary force. This is really important. In this war, the Stalinists were not fighting for the revolution. They were not fighting for socialism. They specifically were fighting for a return to capitalism. And they gave huge tracts of land and farms and businesses back to their original owners and reinstituted private property. And as soon as this happened, boom, there suddenly were shortages of food, shortages of labor, because at this point, the people who had risen up and defeated the military no longer had something to fight for. They only had someone to fight against. And like Hillary versus Bernie in 2016, like once you give people nothing to fight for, once you take away people's hope, they tend to buckle. And that is exactly what happened. And Stalin got around to very promptly losing the war to the fascists. Though, and I will say this, as I said before, the fact that he did make it so costly, particularly for the Italians, that may have gone on to benefit him in the end. So to be entirely fair to Joseph Stalin, to be entirely fair, it may have been that he knew that he only wanted to test his weapons and he didn't want to overcommit and then enter into the war that he probably knew was coming for a really long time. So you can make that argument, but that is the historical situation. And it is so important to understand that, so that we can understand what happens to Orwell in this chapter. And I said to Bobby at the beginning of this, like, everybody knows 1984 and Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Neither of those would have been written if not for Homage to Catalonia. It is the experiences that George Orwell has in Catalonia, being part, going to the front line, fighting fascists, getting shot through the neck, surviving, coming back, and being told that the people who he fought with and nearly died with against fascism were secret fascists that needed to be rounded up and thrown into prison or shot in the head. And of course, George Orwell soon finds himself in the crosshairs of the new Stalinist police. With that stage set, Bobby, take it away.
Well, I think it's hilarious that as you set up that epic introduction and pretty decent summary about the Spanish Civil War and the history of this, that Orwell opens this chapter by complaining in the most English way possible. Because he says the worst thing about being wanted by the police in a town like Barcelona is that everything opens up so late. When you sleep out of doors, you always wake up around dawn, and none of Barcelona's cafes open up much before 9. It was hours before I could get a cup of coffee and a shave. So he's not really complaining about being wanted by the police. He's just angry he can't get a cup of coffee and a shave at a decent hour because he's sleeping outside like a punk.
Oh yeah, because as you said, he's a crust punk at this point.
At this point, man, like he'd be in CBGB and complaining about the Ramones set not going long enough.
You know what's funny? I should say also is this book is so oftentimes Homage to Catalonia is accidentally filed under fiction, and the copy of Homage to Catalonia that I have was actually a double copy. So it had both Homage to Catalonia and it had Down and Out in Paris and London, which is Orwell living as a crust punk.
But both of those aren't fiction.
Yeah,
because I read Down and Out.
Yep, and both were in the fiction section because people think Orwell, they think fiction author, right. And a lot of people believe that they leave out the fact that he's a socialist and simply use his argument against authoritarian socialism as a reason to support capitalism. He's one of the most utterly misquoted writers of all time. But hey, here we are fighting against that. So share this video, by the way, guys, like and subscribe. Let's keep going.
Click the bell too.
I hate clicking the bell. But yes, click the bell.
It's your own bell, man. You gotta ring your own bell.
I don't think I even clicked my own bell.
Oh man. So he wanders back into the center of town, and he notices, as we were talking about earlier, that all the POOMS buildings had been suppressed. Their red flags are turned down. Republican flags are floating in their place, and civil guards are sitting in the doorways armed. The Red Aid Center, which we actually showed a picture of in the episode about the Barcelona fighting, at the corner of the plaza. The police had smashed all the windows. The bookstalls had been emptied. Basically, notices had been put up and everything. And this is something that is done in kind of counterinsurgency scenarios now, and in terms of like militarized police forces in authoritarian regimes, which is probably a better example of, is that the police want to give you the impression that they have the force to be everywhere all at once and all knowing. In reality, the police never actually have enough guys to put on every corner at the same time and in every window. But they want to have big exercises of power like this to make you think that the cops are so powerful that they can just occupy the entire city all at once, and that they can just smash the windows out in this building whenever they want, and they can tear your flags down whenever they want. But in reality, there's probably only like a couple thousand police for the entire city of Barcelona. Which is a lot of guys, but when you consider that there's probably like 200,000 people living in the city, the numbers don't really stack up. But that's something that authoritarian regimes and police forces in general like to do. And I think it's kind of interesting to note there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The giving the impression of mastery without actually possessing mastery.
Right.
Kind of like a more modern version of what they would do, like in the Civil War, where they would like carve a cannon shape out of wood and paint it and lay it like to make it look like they had cannons when they really didn't.
Right. Or we were talking about the Soviet Union. The KGB is famous. Even now, people think that like there's a KGB informer in every building in the Soviet Union. In reality, there would be like one KGB agent per like block, and they would just have like an informer in each building. But those informers would become informers because they were convinced there was a KGB spy in their building, and that they were informing to avoid the wrath of that individual spy.
Mhm.
So, see, Saddam Hussein did that pretty well, believe it or not. There's a really good book you can read about that, specifically called Republic of Fear. I think it was written in like 2004. So it was like right after the Iraq invasion, about his regime and that specific terror.
It's really interesting. Governments, a lot of the time, this is to get off on a bit of a tangent, but it is relevant. So I've been listening to, so I love the QAnon Anonymous podcast.
They're great. I love those guys.
They're phenomenal. And by the way, in case anybody it's called that, they're taking a piss on QAnon. It is not a QAnon podcast. It just covers them. But there's another series that they're doing at the moment called Trickle Down. And it's a series about what happens when bad ideas like flow from the top. And lately they've been talking about the terror alert system in the United States, like the color coded system, and how it wasn't actually used to tell us when a actual terror attack was likely to happen or what to do in most situations. Rather, they just kept it at yellow and moved it occasionally from like yellow to orange, specifically just to freak people out and control their reactions.
Yes, and they've used it politically too. But yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, America does it too. Like there's the meme that goes around in our generation, and I'm sure in the younger generation, that there's the FBI agent watching everything you do on the internet, and that's very obviously cultivated to give you that impression, so you behave that way.
Yeah. And by the way, we have good text and white. I love having you text and white matter. Is that like the nuclear clock? Yeah, except the nuclear clock, if I recall, was created by scientists.
I'm sorry. The nuclear clock is an NGO. Those guys do not work for the government, and a lot of times governments don't like when they adjust that clock. So those guys are not. Maybe if they're an op, they're a really good op. I'll put it that way.
Well, also, like, it was because of the Cold War. Like, they got the idea specifically from like the Cold War embattled mindset, because again, if Americans thought we were going to be nuked at any point in time, they needed it to get into a way where they could control that fear and use that fear to at best prompt people to do constructive things. Though again, this is the government, and they don't do that usually.
The goal for them is usually nuclear disarmament, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Oh, the goal for you, not the government. You mean the goal from
the clock people. Yeah.
Which, I mean, though obviously, again, one of the real tragedies of the current conflict in Ukraine is that Ukraine did do nuclear disarmament. They gave up their nukes, and if they hadn't, Russia would not be in there today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a weird world. Yeah,
Yeah. All right, so keep going, Bobby.
Oh, okay. Back to Orwell. He finds himself in a funny situation in that the cops only actually actively look for him at night, because I guess the police assume that bad guys come out at night. Therefore, they're not really going out during the day.
This is common, by the way. Buenaventura Durruti. I just finished a screenplay, my first commissioned screenplay. Really excited.
Congratulations.
It's called Wanderer's Feast. It will hopefully, when it gets made, we've got some actors we're looking at the moment. It's the young Pedro Pascal from Wonder Woman 1984. He may be playing young Durruti in it. And in this Wanderer's Feast is based on a real incident where Durruti was in Mexico after just having, cut a swath of revolution across Cuba. When he gets into Mexico, the cops are immediately looking for him. They are combing the slums. And Durruti isn't in the slums. he is in the nicest hotel in the entire city of Tampico, pretending to be a Peruvian gemstone mine owner. And he is like hanging out in like the fanciest restaurant in town every single day, dressed as a rich man. That is the setting for this Durruti prequel. Because he invites a radical union member to come and have dinner with him, surrounded by like high society. It's very art house. Like everything focuses on that, and it's really exciting.
Michael Collins did something like that during the Irish Revolution, where they didn't have pictures of him, and the MI5 sent in like a team to find him of their best men, and he would actually go and have drinks with them at their hotel every night. In a big obvious pinstripe suit. Like I got to get you to read his book, Michael Collins in his own words, but that's a different book club episode. But anyway, the cops just can't find Orwell during the day, and they're looking for him while he's asleep at night. He can't go to a hotel though, because the cops have told all the hotel keepers that they have to inform the police whenever somebody checks into the hotel. So again, that gives the people the impression that the police are everywhere and they're monitoring each hotel, but they've just intimidated each hotel owner into assuming that, or into informing them, so that people assume that there's a police in every hotel.
Yeah.
And
this is also a couple chapters ago, in case people missed this one. This is right after like his wife comes up to him, like, well, you can tell the story. The one where his wife comes up to him, like right when he gets back.
Yeah, she walks up to him and she goes, "What the hell are you doing here? Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out!" Under her breath, which is just hilarious because he's like coming back from war. He's been shot, and she's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Moron.
She comes up, she takes his arm. I probably kisses him. I don't know. He's British, so maybe not. But like basically like greets him like as warmly greeting her husband, and like under her breath, she's like, "You gotta get the fuck out of here." The Bolsheviks are watching us.
You want to go to Spanish jail? They still, I don't know if they own Gitmo at this point, but
yeah.
You want to go to Gitmo? I don't think they do, because that was after the Spanish American
Now,
War,
is this the chapter, or was it the last chapter where the cops broke into his hotel room and raided his bed?
That's later this chapter.
Oh shit! Spoiler. I'm sorry. Well, we'll keep going then.
Well, he gets a brilliant idea that he can spend the day before he has to sleep outside like a punk. He can spend the day in the public bath for like a quarter or whatever. And he's like, "Well, this is a great idea." But apparently it occurred to a lot of people. And right after he leaves Barcelona, he says that the police started raiding the bathhouses and started arresting naked Trotskyists, which would just be awful.
I gotta say, out of all the Trotskyists I know, none of them would I like to see naked. Wait, hang on. The Trotskyist that I argued with Stefan Molyneux, with the guy who partnered.
Oh yeah, Proletariat. That guy was like jacked.
Yeah, he's actually like a
fitness guy.
Yeah, he's a personal trainer, which is really funny because like the fascists tried to accuse him of being fat.
Oh God.
And the dude is completely jacked. Just goes to show you that they don't actually even think about this shit. They just have a set amount of like middle school insults that they throw around because they're just not very smart. I'm sorry, continue.
I get called effeminate a lot by them, which is just great.
Yeah, Bobby, you are one of the most legitimately badass people I've ever met. And I've met a lot.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I knew on the Appalachian Trail, I knew a guy who had been in Vietnam. He had enlisted, and he was he was like a point man and a tunnel rat. And at one point, he chucked a grenade. He was like in a tunnel, like shooting at a Viet Cong guy, and the Viet Cong guy is like shooting back at him. And he tosses a grenade. Here's like a pop. And then has to pull the guy out. So he reaches in and pulls him out. And like when he gets out, the whole squad's laughing. You can't figure out why they're laughing. You look down, he'd blown the guy's head in half. And
Jesus.
Like he was holding like his brains and like the inside of his skull.
Oh,
so I've known a lot of badass people. That's what I'm saying.
That's a rough. Yeah. That's a rough one, brother. Wow.
It's a very rough one. It made it into my play, North to Maine. about the through hikers on the Appalachian Trail, because I had a character heavily based on that guy, and I used that story.
Man, gosh, that makes Orwell's dilemma seem a lot lot nicer in comparison, because he's just complaining about running into his friends and not being able to say hello, and how the civil guards and the carbon yarrows are everywhere, which is called we would call that in the coin manual, the counterinsurgency manual, a presence patrol. So they're not even actively looking for people necessarily. The purpose of the patrol is kind of your presence. It's to remind people that you're there.
And
And
you're there to be seen, so
Yeah.
that they, don't do anything out of turn, and hopefully inform on other people out of fear.
Yeah, but he does find out that Bob Smiley, which Council of Bobs, I was very upset to hear this, was dead in prison, and nobody knew how. And that's kind of another method of terror that you see in authoritarian regimes, is that people disappear and you don't know what happens to them. And if you find out they do die, they don't tell you how they died. It could be diseased, it could be executed. You don't know. And it kind of increases your terror, and it decreases your willingness to resist, your morale, basically.
This happened a lot. They even had like a term for it, like in Cuba, which is like there are those prisons that you only leave feet first.
Yeah.
A lot of times people were shot trying to escape, and really, the guy just pulls a gun, tells the guy run, and shoots him. So anyway, like as this this tactic is well known. And in fact, one of the things that Oliver did, this is Juan Garcia Oliver, who is the one guy you can't see in the picture. Here we go. So Oliver was he was the third member of Durruti's team. In real life, he was actually younger than Durruti, but the way I wrote it was that he was the old man, and part of that was dramatic, but also the other part was he was the only one who lived to have pictures of him as an old man. So even though he was younger than Durruti, spoiler, he appears older in the comic. But anyway, so Oliver, when he enters, after the anarchists take over Barcelona, they are invited essentially to enter government. And for the longest time, they refuse. They get to a point where if they don't enter government, the Bolsheviks will take those positions. So reluctantly, Oliver becomes the world's first anarchist minister of justice. And the first thing he does is he releases all of the prisoners and says to them, hey, you're free. You can do whatever you want, but we are fighting this war here. We're having a revolution, and we need your help. What can you do? And the prisoners organized themselves into what was called the Iron Column. There's a whole book on this on AK Press, and they were honestly one of the most effective anarchist fighting units. It was 100% convicts, either normal convicts or political prisoners who had been freed by Oliver. So that's a thing that happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still going.
No. So Bobby, let's keep going. I want to keep it on topic.
Right. Well, it does actually, his death would actually kind of have some implications on some things that we've been discussing, because we've been discussing the difference between tactical, operational, and strategic realms of warfare, right? And a key thing for the Spanish Republicans at this point is foreign volunteers coming in. Orwell's one, Smiley was one. And Orwell notes here that here was this brave and gifted boy who had thrown up his career at Glasgow University in order to come and fight against fascism, who, as I saw for myself, had done his job at the front with faultless courage and willingness, and all they could find to do with him was to fling him in jail and let him die like a neglected animal. I know that in the middle of a huge and bloody war, it is no use making such fuss over an individual death. One aeroplane bomb in a crowded street causes more suffering. But what angers one about a death like this is the utter pointlessness. To be killed in battle, yes, that is what one expects, but to be flung in jail and for an imaginary offense, but simply to owing to dull blind spite and then left to die in solitude, that is a different matter. I fail to see how this kind of thing is not as excuse me. Sorry, guys, COVID. I fail to see how this kind of thing, and it is not as though Smiley's case were exceptional, brought victory and a near. And he's kind of absolutely right here, because not only are you tactically throwing away, individual soldiers, not only does that hurt your operational capacity, but strategically, when people hear about this, and they do hear about it because Orwell published this book while the war was still going on, and other people were publishing accounts of this contemporaneously in newspapers like daily as this was going on. Your foreign volunteers aren't going to be likely to show up to fight for you when it turns out you get thrown in jail and die of quote unquote appendicitis, or maybe you get shot in the back of the head because you're in a militia that they don't like. So that hurts the Spanish Republicans, even though they think it's accomplishing their goal of having unitary government control over the military. They're actually weakening their ability to recruit manpower. And as we've discussed previously, the Spanish Republican army stayed relatively steady over the course of the war, while the fascist army grew in number over the course of the war. So anything that's hurting your ability to get new recruits is a major strategic issue for the Republicans in this war, and they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing this. And it's something that you kind of miss if you don't, a nerd like me, paying attention to the weird military science aspects of this story.
Yeah, that is fascinating. What do you think, like, out of that strategy? Because that sounds like a strategy that, especially an authoritarian would think would be very effective.
Yeah.
What makes it so particularly ineffective?
Well, in this case, it's that everybody's hearing about what's happening to this guy. If you had like a few, this is going to sound really evil, but if I'm putting on my evil asshole hat for the moment, doing war crimes and trying to, maintain power. If you have a small militia that you have to kind of get rid of, you do it quietly and you purge them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing it publicly and loudly, and they're letting word of it get out. They think that's going to intimidate everybody else, but what it's doing is it's drawing up their recruits.
Nobody wants to join to fight because they might get purged.
Exactly.
Or even if they join, Stalin's party, they might suddenly get in a firefight with like the anarchists or some of the other factions that are running around.
And it's not only, leftists and anarchists who are going to be talking about this, but it's the fascists too. It's like, look at these monsters that we're fighting. They're not only killing us and doing all this other stuff that we're going to make up because we're fascists and this is all propaganda, but they're killing each other too. You can't even trust them. They can't even trust each other. They're monsters. So like people who are undecided in villages or small towns are going to hear that and go like, wow, okay, the fascists aren't killing each other. Those crazy leftists are just killing each other left, right, and sideways.
Yeah, which is unfortunately, it's a perennial problem of the left. There's a number of reasons behind it, but it's one of the reasons why I am very reluctant ever to engage in any kind of sectarianism. Like, even if there's a guy on the left or a woman or a non-bronery.
You're welcome for that one.
Yeah,
I love that one.
Beautiful line, Bobby.
Yeah.
If I think they suck, I'm not going to physically oppose them unless I don't have any other choice. Yeah. Because, the right is already going to attack us at every opportunity. We do not need to be doing these people's job for them. So I really feel like one of the major lessons of Homage to Catalonia is that sectarianism and, the what I call a purity spiral is just one of the worst things that happen to the left. And it is one of the reasons why the left is terrible at seizing power.
Yeah, it is. So, on that happy note, Orwell meets his wife and two British comrades at the British consulate where they can't arrest him because they don't want to really piss off the British in addition to everything else. And they're trying to visit Kopp, his friend, who's been arrested. Unfortunately, Kopp is held incommunicado in a prison that Orwell describes as being like a dungeon. You could get a pass, but it wasn't safe to do it more than once or twice, since the police watch people who come and go and they take note of who requests the pass. That tells me that the cops are actually kind of being lazy. They don't want to examine each pass to see a prisoner. They just want somebody 2 or 3 times and then bring it to me. so it kind of shows you that they're lazy and that they don't actually have the resources to examine everybody. that actually comes to visit people because they've done these mass arrests. They lead him through these massive steel doors into this jail, and he sees a Spanish militiaman he had known at the front being led out between two civil guards, being dragged basically out of there. So you know what's kind of going on in this in this quote unquote correctional facility, I guess. He also sees an American militiaman, so you know. Who had just left for home a few days earlier, and he got arrested at the border for being in the POOM. So you know that it's a serious dragnet when they're even arresting people who are trying to leave the country. That could also be them trying to kind of maintain purity of messaging to not let them out of the country, but as we've established, it's not really working. There's still actually like Viva la Revolutionary, Viva la Revolution posters on the walls in this grimy dungeon that poor cop is being held in.
That is ironic.
Yeah, which is awful.
I feel like that's one of those things that, like, if I did, well, I have written 2 movies about this period, but if I wrote a movie about the period and like I put that on the wall, like in my scene, like people would read it and be like, okay, do you think you're laying it on a little thick, Brent?
Yeah, right. You know, real life sometimes just goes crazier than fiction, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So they finally meet Cop, and this poor guy, he's still in his kind of neater uniform, and somehow he's managed to shave in this like sea of humanity where he has to like elbow his way towards Orwell to see him. And the first thing Cop tells Orwell is like, well, I suppose we're all going to be shot. He says cheerfully. The word shot gave me an inward shudder, says Orwell, because a bullet had just entered his own body. So it's like,
so he's getting triggered here. There's some PTSD.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame him. I would be messed up too. Orwell does note that at the time he took it for granted that all the people in the POOM would actually be shot, and Cop, being an officer, would be shot along with them. The rumor of Nin, who was a POOM leader's death, had filtered through, and they already knew that the POOM was being accused of treachery and espionage. Everything pointed to a huge frame-up trial, followed by a massacre of leading quote-unquote Trotskyists. It's a terrible thing to see your friend in jail and to know yourself impotent to help him, for there was nothing that one could do unless even to appeal to the Belgian authorities, for Cop had broken the law of his own country by coming here. So you see that a lot of these guys risk a lot, including Cop, who we'll have to do an episode on. Please do not look up his story before we do an episode on Cop specifically, because his story is nuts.
You've been saying for a while you want me to, so we will do that. Well, you will tell me the story of Cobb of Cop.
Yeah.
Cobb is Gangs of New York.
Yeah, different guy. So poor Cop is in jail, waiting to be shot because he was supposed to report to a military officer in Barcelona with a letter recommending him basically for a position in the Ministry of War, and the police just arrested him because he was in the POOM. But they arrested him and they took away his letter that recommended him for this military position. So Orwell's like, oh, I'll just go get the letter, which is the most English like white man thing ever to do. It's like, I'll just go to police and get this letter. And so he basically, I'm skipping a little bit over some details of this, but he actually does go to the police and asks the police for the letter basically nicely. They ask him what force was Major Cop serving in because he had been arrested and they beat it. And he's like, well, in the POOM. And the police are like, in the POOM? What are you talking about, buddy? So he kind of has to, they tell him that they'll look for the letter, and he kind of has to hit bricks for a little while. And as he's leaving, though, they ask him, like, hey, you were at the front. Were you in the POOM militia? And he's like, yep.
Oh, boy.
Like, oh, God. So he actually, instead of dealing with the police, he actually goes to the colonel that Cop was supposed to meet. And it's here that we kind of meet my favorite character in this book. And it's because I've kind of been this guy. He goes to this war ministry, And there's this like guy sitting at the desk of the important guy, right? Because the important guy doesn't sit out in the public office. The important guy sits in his office, drinking his scotch, smoking a cigar, and pretending that he's working, while his adjutant outside handles the hoi polloi. And Orwell walks in, and he's very paranoid and sad that he's kind of dirty, and his voice is kind of shaky, and he thinks he looks like a lunatic as he's trying to explain to this aide-de-camp that he needs to see the colonel. And I think Orwell gets it very wrong here, because it's not that he looks like shabby, it's that he's terrifying. Because I want you to put yourself in the position of this adjutant for a minute, right? You're a clean uniformed guy, you probably got a nice Spanish breakfast in the morning, you're drinking your coffee, and this lunatic comes in your office, dirty, wearing like a great coat, and he's talking like a spaghetti western villain because he's been shot in the throat, and he's like, "I need to see your boss."
Oh,
and it turns out he's in a terrorist militia that's been suppressed.
Oh
Orwell thinks he's humoring it, but this poor kid is terrified. like,
oh boy,
somebody's walking. I need to see your boss, kid. Okay, buddy.
He's in Al Qaeda.
Yeah. No, it's like, yeah, I work for Osama bin Laden. I need to see your boss. You know.
Oh, my lord.
And you're just this like staff officer who ain't done anything. You're like, okay, I'll go talk to the colonel, buddy.
Please don't kill me.
Please don't kill me. You run into the colonel's office and go like, there's a dude out there who's been shot in the throat who says he works for this terrorist militia and he needs to see you. And but it actually goes well, because the colonel kind of does help Orwell out. And they do kind of get the letter for Cop, but they don't know how much it's going to help him because he's still in the Poom militia, but Orwell's kind of done his good deed. He also actually goes back to the Cafe Mocha, which is the cafe that they had kind of almost shot it out over during the Barcelona fighting. And
I remember.
Yeah,
that was like there were assault guards who at the time were loyal to the Stalinists, like in the cafe across the street, and then he and Cop and everybody else were with the Poom in the other cafe.
Yeah. And
Orwell tries to shoot a bomb and fails.
Yeah, he does. He tries to shoot a bomb and fails, and Cop just like grabs a rifle and does it because he's a badass.
True protagonist.
Oh no, he doesn't shoot it. He bowls a grenade like a bocce ball at the other grenade.
Nice.
Which is, I guess, I mean, if it's dumb and it works, it's not dumb. But the civil guards are still hanging out at the same cafe, and Orwell gets the idea that if they tell the authorities that Cop had like eased the fighting during the Barcelona uprising, then maybe he'd get out of jail. So he goes in and he asks the police to testify on behalf of his friend. And it goes like kind of okay. It's loud and they pretend not to be able to hear him, and then a few of them kind of say like, yeah, your friend was an okay guy, but nothing really comes of that.
Yeah, it sounds like nothing. Yeah. It's a shame because I think we both know where he's going. So let's shall we continue?
Sorry. Then we get to the scene with the hotel thing that you were talking about. That Orwell's wife can still stay in a nice hotel because she's not in the Poom and she has a passport. And the civil guards decide to raid that hotel room because she's associated with him, and they take all of his memorabilia. They take his correspondence, they take his notes, they take his camera, they take a lot of his photos, but they keep a few of their important documents under the bed. And like Brenton was saying earlier, because of Spanish manners, they won't move a woman off of the bed to search under the mattress, which is a very not kind of Gestapo thing to do. And Orwell kind of notes that Spanish, if the fascists win in Spain, it probably won't have as evil of a character as it did in Germany and Italy because of the kind of Spanish character as a culture, which, you know, it's true and it's not true, because on the one hand, was Spain as monstrous as Nazi Germany? Obviously not. On the other hand, the Blue Brigades that fought on behalf of the Nazis in World War II did some of the most savage and horrific war crimes on the Eastern Front, from 41 to 45. Or 41 to 44, I think the Spanish actually wound up recalling them. So, fascism is always monstrous, no matter, the character of the people instituting it. Orwell does take this opportunity to do something rather intelligent, and he kind of he decides it's time to go. Once they get their papers in order, and it's a kind of a very underwhelming conclusion to this story. But he's excuse me, COVID-19, guys. 1 second, I'll be 1 second.
Yeah, Bobby has been coughing for quite a while. Oh wow, and my Google account is freaking out on me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I don't know what. So something weird happened with my Gmail. I was trying to pull. I was getting a Nestor Machno page because I was going to pull it up at the end of this to show everybody. And like I'm getting this alert that my account, my work account, has been suspended, and I have no idea what that is or why that's happening. But I just tried to send an email from it, and it is like flashing up and down on my screen. So, yay, that's happening.
You're gonna be spending some time on the phone there, brother.
Yep. All right. So let's keep going though.
So he winds up getting out of Spain, and once he crosses the frontier, he starts noticing that kind of the world is going about as normal, but he kind of has a cynicism from having experienced the war that doesn't allow him to enjoy it as much. And that's kind of something that I'd like to talk about a little bit, is that like after you see war, even though Orwell's war was relatively short, shorter than one of my deployments, once you see like horrific stuff, like he saw or got shot in the neck like he did, it does change you, and it's something that you don't want to have to live with your whole life. But it's something that you're going to remember forever. And Orwell even notes that he can't enjoy Paris as much as he did before the war. And when I hear people talk a lot about like violent revolution or civil war, national divorce, or whatever they're doing, it's almost always people that have never actually had to put foot to ass for country, or actually seen what that looks like, or been within 100 miles of a war. You don't want a war. In this case, it was necessary. This was the third Carlist war.
Yeah.
So
there's. So what's important in this case of Spain, the war was actually picked by the fascists. The reason the revolution happened is because the fascists attacked.
Exactly.
The fascists attacked, the anarchists beat them, realized that they were in control of not just Barcelona, but the entire Aragon front. And we're like, okay, let's go do this revolution that we were planning to have. And they did it, and it was awesome. And then it went to shit because of Stalin, among other things. But yeah, so I will never forget. So on my show, Insurrection with Brenton Lengel, when I was on the radio, there had been a conversation that was going on among different activists in Occupy, and some of the crazier ones, I'll just say it like that, assuming they weren't plants, were arguing for violence. And I remember my co-host, George Martinez, the former official ambassador of hip hop, like literally employed by the U.S. government as a cultural ambassador of hip hop, both to urban communities and to the world in general. And I remember like the question of violence, came up, and he was like, "You do not want any of that." No. Like when violence hits the streets, it's never a good thing, no matter what. So, I've for the longest time, I've really focused on, human revolution, on finding a way to move towards a better, saner, more peaceful world through peaceful methods, as opposed to, salivating over guillotines and the like. It's unfortunately, I think that a lot of people that haven't experienced violence and don't know people who've experienced violence seem to get an idea in their heads, usually born by, Hollywood and video games, that violence is something that, if it's done righteously, can be employed, and as long as you win, it's fine. But guys, stay the hell away from that. That's something that this story, it's one of the major things that this story is showing us. But continue, Bobby.
I do love that Orwell starts indulging in like petty material vices as soon as he leaves he says it's about 6 months, so 6 months he's out of Spain, from the time he gets there to the time he leaves. And the first thing is to rush to the tobacco kiosk and buy as many cigars and cigarettes as he could stuff in his pockets, because he couldn't get any tobacco, and he's a degenerate nicotine addict. And I can kind of appreciate that, because when I left Afghanistan, we had to stop in Qatar, and I had checked my cigars in my humidor in a box that was on the plane, and they would not let us buy tobacco on the base in Qatar. You had to go to Doha, which was like 50 miles away, to get tobacco. So like we were all just fiending for like 4 days in the Qatari heat, because they wouldn't let us buy any tobacco. So I thought that was funny.
That is really cool.
Yeah, Qatar is weird. Then he went to a buffet and had a cup of tea with fresh milk for once. And this is very aggressively English. And he gets off on the fact that there's a pro-Francoist Spaniard who works at his favorite cafe that has to serve him, knowing that he was a POUM militiaman. And he just glowers at him every time he gets an aperitif, which is just the most like petite bourgeois like pettiness that is just hilarious to me. It'd be like if there was a Proud Boy who worked at like the local Jimmy John's and that made him make my sandwich.
Yeah, make that sandwich better. No, you know what? There's something wrong with it. Make another one.
It's not red enough. I need it red. Oh man. But he also mentions that he remembers the militiamen that he had. He thinks of all the faces of the militiamen that he knew when he was on the line, the ones he had seen killed in battle, the maimed ones, the ones that he hopes are still safe and sound. He actually says here, good luck to them all. I hope they win their war and drive the foreigners out of Spain, Germans, Russians, and Italians alike. This war, which I played such an ineffectual part, has left me with memories that are mostly evil, and yet I do not wish that I had missed it. When you have had a glimpse of such a disaster as this, and however it ends, as the Spanish war will turn out to have been an appalling disaster, quite apart from the slaughter and the physical suffering, the result is not necessarily disillusionment and cynicism. Curiously enough, the whole experience has left me with not less but more belief in the decency of human beings, and I hope the account I have given is not too misleading. I believe that on such an issue as this, no one is or can be completely truthful. It is difficult to be certain about anything except what you have seen with your own eyes. In any case, I have not said this somewhat earlier in the book. I shall say it now. Beware of my partisanship, my mistakes of fact, and the distortion inevitably caused by my having seen only one corner of events. Beware exactly the same things when you read any other book in this period of the Spanish Civil War. So, he wishes the Spaniards luck in driving all of the foreigners out of their country, from the Stalinists to the fascists. He notes that he'll never forget the horror that he saw, but it's left him with more of a belief in fighting for what's right, which is good. There were, in my war, there were bad things that we saw, obviously, but there were moments of good things. And there were some good things that we did that kind of made me believe in our cause while I was over there. More so when I was a peacekeeper with the United Nations than I was when I was occupying Afghanistan. But that's a very real thing. And war does stick with you for the rest of your life. Ask any veteran who's seen any kind of combat, or even guys who didn't see combat, who just stayed on the fobs and got shot at by artillery for the last 20 years. They'll never forget what they saw.
Yeah, I had
But
a good friend who was a soldier, and he never. So two friends, two guys
yeah,
that I graduated high school with. One of them became a Marine,
yeah,
and he went out and he was in Iraq, and he came back with the weirdest habit
yeah.
in that he had a whole book full of photographs of watches.
Huh.
Um, and he like we were like, dude, why do you have all these photographs of watches? And he told us that there was this one time in Iraq that he had come upon like a body that had been like basically incinerated,
Yeah.
except on the corpse's arm was a completely undamaged wristwatch. And from that point on, he became like obsessed with taking pictures of wristwatches.
Oh, that's weird. Oh,
Yeah.
that's not weird. I shouldn't say that's weird. That's something that's post traumatic, and I hope he worked through that.
Yeah, the other guy, he came back with PTSD, and he never saw combat. I think it was just military life,
Yeah,
and some of the stuff that he went through
it's rough.
that really like just drilled that into him. And he's been dealing with it for years ever since.
We had this kid, to tell you how it's kind of funny, but it's tells you how badly they drill it into you. He was timid when in basic training, like he's
Mhm.
timid, nice little sensitive guy, and he decided to be a soldier for whatever reason. The drill sergeants made him yell "kill" like at the top of his lungs every time they would say his name, right? So it'd be like
Oh
Smith,
wow.
kill, Smith, kill, like for 10 weeks of this, right? And then
Mhm.
there's a family day, and his mom, this kid's like 19, and his mom comes running on the field, and she's like, little Jimmy, and he hears his name, right? Little
And
Jimmy, and he turns around, cow. And his mom.
wow.
So once they get into your head, bro, like it's kind of hard to get them out.
Yeah. Well, there was one of the things that they did to the guy that I knew. And he gave me this story secondhand was this was before the cell phone was as ubiquitous as it
Yeah,
is now. So when he was in training overseas, they put him in a room and told him essentially that he would have so much time to use a phone card to call his mom back home.
oh yeah,
And
we
he
had
was
that.
yeah, and he was in there with like several people. And so when he was in there, they then turned out the lights so he couldn't read the
Oh, that's
number
brutal.
on the card. And he was just sitting there like trying to get to it because he only had this much time.
Oh, they did not
And
like him.
yeah. Oh, they did not like him at all.
Not even a little.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sticks with you is kind of what I'm saying. He does close the book on a curious case, is that he comes back to England, um, and he notices like everything's basically the same as it's always been since his childhood. But he worries that the deep, deep sleep of England, from which I sometimes fear we shall be never wake, will be jerked out of. Excuse me, from which I sometimes fear that we shall never wake till we are jerked out of it by the war of bombs. So he's afraid that the war that he just left is going to come to England, which does happen, and he's well
Yeah.
founded in this politically. But it's also something that happens to veterans after wars, is that they come home, and even if it's a very peaceful place like the United States is, relatively speaking, to the rest of the world, uh, they become kind of paranoid that the war is going to come back
Mhm.
and kind of follow them. You see this in a lot of like Vietnam guys who are like kind of convinced that like the Viet Cong were going to the commies were going to be around every
Coming to
corner
get
when they
them.
would come back. A lot of GWOT guys got real paranoid after we came home. Global War on Terrorism guys
Mhm.
came, which is why I think you kind of see a proliferation of like tactical gear and people like prepping for like some sort of Red Dawn scenario in this
Mhm.
country. So the psychological wounds of war kind of proliferate into your society, and you can kind of see that in our gun culture a lot in the United States right now, and a lot of it in our politics, that is that we've been paranoid for 20 years that the war is going to come home
Mhm.
to get us. Uh, in Orwell's case, it was a well-founded fear because the Nazis would be bombing England in like 3 years after he wrote that.
Yeah.
So touche to me from myself. But
Mhm.
it's just something that I want to stress at the end of this, is that there's a real human cost of war, uh, and you can see the scars of it that this 6 months of war left on Orwell. And you can see it in his writing for the rest of his life. Because after you read this, you start to see other little bits of this come back, and other things he wrote, like Animal Farm in '84.
Absolutely. Well, and it also wasn't just that. He was also, before this, and one of the reasons he got moved up in the ranks was he was colonial police in India. It's funny too, because so I got into an argument on my wall, a political one.
Oh no, you never.
No, it was on a friend's wall, and there was this meme that came out, and it was very clearly like a low key tanky meme, because like it had all these famous socialists on it, giving quotes about socialism, and so you're reading through, and there's Marx, there's Lenin, there's Rosa Luxemburg, and then like suddenly, I noticed on the meme that it didn't have a single left libertarian or libertarian socialist. It had freaking Chavez quoted, but
Hugo?
it had Chavez from from Venezuela. And then I was just like, wait, what are you doing, like putting Chavez on this when you have Tolstoy and Emma Goldman and George Orwell? Like then they've all said amazing things about socialism, but you're kind of tipping your hand there. And I think the only reason Luxemburg is even on there is deniability, because a lot of tankies, you talk to them, they're like, oh, Luxemburg deserved to be killed. But like looking at that, I remember I got into it because one of the things that people will throw at Orwell is that he was a snitch. And this is because Orwell wrote a letter to his publisher that contained a list of names of other leftists that he considered to essentially be Stalinists. And it was right before he died. He sent it to the guy. And basically it was like, hey, don't disseminate these guys' work because they're Stalinists, Right. And so people are like, oh, he's a snitch. He snitched but like, first off, he's not giving that to the government. And then second of all, do you think there might have been a reason he might have been a little gun shy around freaking Stalinists?
Yeah, I wonder.
After this experience.
Yeah, after he had to like flee the country after his friend was in the dungeon, and he had to scare some poor little staff officer. I need to talk to your boss.
Like, oh my Lord. And of course, he's wearing an ascot for the rest of his life because of that bullet through his neck.
I always just thought he was a Ponce wearing the ascot until I read this book, and I'm like, that's why he has the dumb ascot on all the time.
I still wonder if part of the reason like anarchist kids will wear the bandanas is Orwell.
well, very few people know that Fred from Scooby-Doo got shot in the same place in Korea, which is why he's wearing them.
Oh God. I hope I'm hired to write like the comic Scooby-Doo at some point.
Well, Venture Brothers did it.
Oh, they did that?
Well, they didn't. Actually, they did it much worse. They have the Scooby Gang as the Manson family.
Oh, jeez.
And Fred's basically Charlie. Velma is the lady who wrote the Scum Manifesto.
Society for Cutting Up Men.
Daphne is Patty Hearst. Shaggy and Scooby are the son of Sam and the dog, and he's the only one who can hear the dog stuff.
He talked to the wow.
Yeah,
I love Venture Brothers.
Oh, it's so dark.
Yeah. By the way, I am friends with the woman who does the voice for Triana Orpheus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's my buddy's wife, and she's done a lot of really cool stuff. So yeah, she had her own kind of goth band, and she used to be married to the guy who now does Venture Brothers.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, because it's arts and everything intersects.
Well, if you're listening, Triana Orpheus, hello, I like your work.
Yeah, I gotta say, Triana was like one of my favorite characters on that show. Okay, so Bobby, and I'm really glad you read like Orwell's last few lines, because those are the most important lines like in the whole book, in my opinion. It did an excellent reading. what's your takeaway on this book? Like, what do you think Orwell got right? What do you think he got wrong? What do you think is valuable about this work, considering you have a unique insight that I do not?
You never, well, you do, but you usually don't get a lot of grunt level accounts of warfare. Usually the popular books about war are written by like the generals, and it's about like big strategic maneuvers and stuff, and you don't really hear about life in the trenches. So it's cool to see a human level perspective on the war, and you see it from somebody who's kind of a cultural outsider. So if you're not from Spain, like you and I aren't, obviously, coming into this book, you kind of get an introduction to what Spain was like from an outsider who doesn't take the little things for granted. So you kind of see the Spanish culture relative to the English culture, which I guess would be kind of closer to us as Americans. So you get to see that. Orwell is great at detail work, and all the little details he puts in lead you to think about other things in military science if you have that background. So he set the ground for me talking to you about Clausewitz and operational versus tactical warfare without kind of knowing it, but it's a really great case study to bring to somebody's attention if you're trying to teach them about how war works. You get to know the intimate details about how terrifying it is to get shot at by artillery. You get to know that all your soldiers aren't always hyper confident. You get the idiot who throws the grenade in the fire for fun at the beginning.
or in your case, the guy who pulls the grenade and throws the pin.
Yeah. No. He kept the pin and you're right. He held his grenade and threw the pin. Yeah, exactly. I can't believe he did that. He almost shot me twice too. No, I'm serious. Like one of the times it was raining, and if it's raining, you can really hear a bullet zip by you because it's hitting all the water. And I heard that thing go about like 2 inches from my ear.
It's okay. So I have found in my time on this planet, I like to think I'm almost 40 years old. So I like to think I've gained a decent amount of wisdom with all the weird shit I've done and crazy people that I have encountered. But like one of the things that has always struck with me looking at workspaces, like elite workspaces, and meeting some of like the richest people in the country, which arguably are some of the richest people in the world, kind of getting an insight into like the art scene and music and history and academia. And so often, like there are definitely some standout, very exceptional people that I've run into. But very rarely are these the people who are the real big movers and shakers. These tend to be people who are usually in some sort of subordinate position and are kind of hamstrung by the idiots above them. That has been a constant refrain in my life. So, for instance, when Putin attacked Ukraine, I was flipping out. I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody did.
I didn't call it, for the record. I was incorrect on my prediction that he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed so insane. But again, if you see inside his head and you know who he's listening to and the way he sees the world, the attack becomes more obvious in hindsight. Yeah. But he attacked and fell on his face. And the Russian military, I don't know the latest here. I've been meaning to check that out.
70,000.
70,000 what?
Dead.
Oh my God. Is that on both sides or is that just 70,000 dead Russians?
Yeah, give or take.
Holy.
That's the last number I saw.
That's is horrifying.
That's not counting like 40% of their operational tanks, all the planes.
Yeah. Well, you remember I sent you my story.
I gotta send you that back, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been waiting on this. So there's a short story that I wrote, guys, that I've been looking to get published. I may make it into a comic book one day, but it is based on a nightmare that I had, and the premise of this nightmare, and I honestly think it was me kind of thematically dealing with the state. But the idea was that this nightmare was from the point of view of a soldier in kind of an Iraq type situation. And his job was to guard what is referred to in the thing as the big gun. Yeah. And the big thing in this is that the big gun is mobile. Kind of looks, in my mind, kind of looks like a howitzer. And it is only able to kill things that are so far away that no one can see them. Yeah. So it's this horrifically powerful weapon that he is charged with defending and that the people in his unit use. But he experiences no protection from it whatsoever. And like, that's the premise of this kind of horror story based upon the dream. Now, the crazy thing about this is that the US just deployed the real world version of that. Yeah. In Ukraine. Like what were those things called?
HIMARS. It's a rocket system.
Yeah, HIMARS. So, the Ukrainians now essentially have this rocket system that has been obliterating Russian ammo stores. Yeah. But like, I'm just sitting there and I see this and I'm like, oh my God, this is literally my nightmare come to life. Yeah, so Bobby, please do send me notes on that story.
Absolutely. But well, I'm stuck in the house for another week because I've got COVID, so I got nothing else to do.
Perfect. Well, I gave you COVID.
I will fucking come up there.
But yeah, like I think overall the book is Homage to Catalonia is one of the most important books that have ever been read. Yeah. Not only is it a firsthand, like it's a great primary source, it's a firsthand account of just how incredible the Spanish Revolution was and the society that they were building, that for the record was exceptionally successful. And the fact that this is happening, it's basically being put together by amateurs who were put into this situation by, Providence. They wind up with an entire region on their hands and the chance to put into practice all of the ideas that their movement had been building since the end of the French Revolution. And they put them into practice and it worked. It worked amazingly well, to the point that farmers and factory workers armed with handmade bombs and antique rifles were able to defeat a modern, mechanized, professional army, and not just defeat the one army, but literally hold the line for years against fascists supported by some of the most powerful empires the world has ever known. And, ultimately these people who were competent, but again, amateurs, untrained, who had a kind of revolutionary zeal and fervor because they were fighting for something. They were fighting for their revolution. And I really believe that, this model, maybe not exactly, but I like to think that looking at the future of our species and where we're going, and if we're going to be on this planet much longer, I really feel like this particular model, there is a lot that is compelling about it. That model being, anarchism, anarcho-syndicalism. There are different, there are different things about it that are effective and less than effective. And it's one of the things that I've actually really loved hearing about the war, like from your perspective, because, I tend to have a more romantic kind of leftist perspective. The other thing that I always really take away from this is that, this is essentially a guide on if you start functioning within the left, you are going to run into things that Orwell ran into. Maybe not as heightened, especially if you're lucky,
Yeah.
But
hopefully no bullets.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as like the stuff I saw at Occupy Wall Street and the stuff I've seen, with regard to like bread tube and like all this other petty crap.
Well, like, even me in my local Democratic Party, there's a DSA guy who thinks that I'm a CIA plant.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I've purposely stopped saying the CIA, and I just say CIA, which is what CIA guys do, to fuck with him. But now I can't stop myself from doing it.
Yeah.
But
You have
there's
to accuse him of snitch jacketing. That's the way you
oh
you
I'll,
strike back at
I'll have
that.
to write that one down. But there's
Yeah.
there's an older Hillary woman who's accusing me of being a Russian plant at the same time.
Oh my
Meanwhile, I'm just trying to register voters.
Yeah.
So I've seen it too, you know.
Well, it's funny also just like the leaps of logic people will make on like who a person is when they identify. Like in my last debate, the one I put you through, the debate, like at one point, Nick Fuentes, he came after me because I was wearing a Ukraine pendant.
Yeah.
Now, this is funny because that Ukraine pendant was actually given to me by my mother. She handmade it, like handmade glass, which is one of the cooler things she's given me. And I was like sitting there. I don't wear it a lot. So I was sitting there before the debate and I'm like, Nick Fuentes is in this and he's all into Vladimir. So I'm going to wear this just to throw him off. And of course, he went in and like tried to attack me for having it, at which point Destiny pounced.
Yeah, that was like the good part of it.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite bits there. It's really funny. The fascists lately have been trying to there's been a couple clips they put out where it's either they have my thing where you know Nick Fuentes is talking about like how important the nuclear family is. Jeez. And I'm just like, yeah, says the guy with like no wife, no kids, no girlfriend, and he's just like, well, you're fat and you look homeless and you're wearing a Ukraine, like he's just throwing out just aspects. and I'm just like sitting there like, you know, again, nearly 40 years old, hearing these insults that are, you know, not even well thought out. They don't actually hit me to my core, even though like I think a couple of these videos have done the thing where they like zoom in and show my reaction very slowly, because if you do that it always makes it look like somebody's really reacting. But like
it's always so pathetic for me because I've literally been insulted by professionals and none of these losers can even come close to it.
Exactly. But like, yeah, people they love to cast other people that they disagree with or are jealous of, or for whatever reason, as kind of more of a monster than they actually are. Because ultimately, like, none of us are monsters, not even the monsters. We're complicated human beings trying to live with each other. Yeah. So I mean, my feeling on this book is it is a manual for how to recognize and avoid leftist bullshit. It is a very solid, critical eye that sees the possibilities in the anarchist model, that sees the new world that communists, and by that I mean not just like the communists have been trying to bring about since like ancient Greece. You know, and you mentioned Orwell, like when he got shot in the throat and his reaction to the feeling that he was dying. And I never had put that together because you pointed out that the reaction that Orwell had, the total like love for the world around him, and for the silliness that had caused him to, at that point, he thinks, leave the world that suited him so well, despite how critical he is of it. Like, regardless of like what your political ideology is, I think there's maybe a personality type, or perhaps a maybe even deeper than that, kind of an archetype in the people that are trying to cut through the bullshit of society, to see through, you know, the tribalism, the sectarianism, the greed, and try to help people see just how incredible being alive is, and the possibilities that we have, and the fact that a lot of this stuff that people think that we need to use to keep people, you know, I guess drilled, regimented, and driven to I guess to not fall into the Hobbesian war of all against all. There's always been people who stand outside of society and cast a vision back like Orwell did. In a way, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with a lot of my art. People in the comments, by the way, I noticed this, and I'm going to go down and read because I love you guys. But somebody was saying that we needed more anarchist propaganda. It's interesting because I'm kind of the opposite of a propagandist. I am an artist. A propagandist oftentimes, and I'll use it in more neutral terms, someone that propagates an idea, someone that, you can do it for good or evil. But a propagandist, especially one in the negative sense of the word, like that Russian guy in the cafe when Orwell got back.
That's such a powerful passage because you can literally see the genesis of like O'Brien in that guy. Yeah. And like, as I was reading that, I was like, "Oh my God, O'Brien was a real guy." It was this odious little bastard in this cafe.
Yeah, who's sitting there? For those of you who haven't seen that episode, what's happened is that Orwell, after being shot in the neck, is back in Barcelona, and there is a Russian propagandist in the cafe, again spreading lies about the poom. But overall, like a propagandist will use the truth oftentimes to tell lies. This was something that I kind of encountered when I was dealing with that like social justice warrior or actual justice warrior weirdo. Whereas an artist like myself uses lies to tell the truth. And I think that for a certain, there is room for both. And just like propaganda can be used for evil, art can also be used for evil. But we see in art, like what George Orwell has created, we see that like a very powerful, I guess, torrent of his vision that has been added to our own collective unconscious. And I think that that's one of the most incredibly important things about this story. And I've been talking over Bobby, so
no, you're good, man. Like, if anything, you're disguising the fact that I'm coughing like I have tuberculosis. So.
Yeah, and yes, by the way, I see in the comments we had the CNT and the FI were doing good propaganda. Yes, indeed they were. The CNT, they represented like. There's a reason why I think like Buenaventura Durruti is probably one of the best men to exist in history. In the same way I think John Brown is. They are people that saw the world around them and were determined to leave it better than they found it. Now, and it's interesting that you mentioned this when he was talking about like all of the people that Orwell had seen. This variant cover we have of Durruti. This is done by Adam Bryce Thomas of Samurai Jack and Sonic the Hedgehog. And one of the things that I liked about it was that he's essentially providing us with, Durruti mixed in with several figures from the Anarchists and from the period at the time. And in a lot of ways, I feel that there is an element of, this particular past confronting us that can be artistically depicted essentially, as the people that were lost, staring right at us, seeing like how, I guess, giving us the impetus to continue to make the most of the time that we have. So yeah, I mean, that's the whole story right there. So Bobby, do you have anything that's dying to come out of you at this point? Now that we have finished this incredibly long series, and I'm sorry that I procrastinated so long before doing this last issue.
No, it's all good, man. I've had a great time doing it. It's been a trip to actually discuss this.
And we're still doing work together, right?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. Yeah.
Good. Sure. I put you on the spot on the internet. You.
Oh man, no, I ain't got no shame. If this wasn't good, I wouldn't have gone past like chapter 3. But hey, I could send you my highlighted copy of the book, and you could use it as a Kickstarter Kickstarter reward.
Oh, dude, I will totally do that. Send that to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll send you some free comics in return.
you should
Um,
you should definitely you should definitely read Michael Collins in his own words, and I'm putting
mhm.
you on the spot to you
I,
can read the one about my great uncle. It's only like 115 pages.
He's your great uncle?
Yeah, Michael Collins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that the whole Irish connection.
yeah,
um, it's really interesting. I watched the Behind the Bastards episode about the Irish potato famine,
yeah. That's a
which,
real trip, isn't it?
yeah. By the way, is the next book decided already? Oh, you mean the next book that we will go over? No, it hasn't been decided, but there are some big ones. Do you have a recommendation?
There's the Michael Collins one. We could, if you wanted to do some theory, we could do oh God, what's it called? Uprising by Biardi, which is actually a really good one that's up your alley. He argues that we should return poetry to our language concerning production,
Mhm.
which is
I
interesting.
think we should return poetry to our language as much as possible. A
Yeah,
poet can talk about absolutely anything using very few words.
you
It's
get
it's an art that has largely been lost in our culture, and I'd like to see it make a big return.
yeah. I'm looking
Um,
at my bookshelf.
yeah. Well, I will let you choose the book the next time. I at one point want to do Adam Hochschild's Anarchy's Cossack.
Oh, that's an
Um,
interesting book.
yeah, do the
I've actually
Nestor
read that.
Makhno book with you.
Yeah. I might get angry a couple times because they did make a couple mistakes. You should watch the awful movie that the Russians made a couple years ago called The Admiral,
Uh-huh.
about Admiral Kolchak, where they turned him into an action hero.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I don't know if you know about Kolchak.
I'm not familiar. What
Oh,
did Kolchak do?
he was the White Army leader, and he was this like neurotic, weird little man who had like 3 wives
Oh wow.
in different cities, and like they turned him into this like tragic hero.
Of what? Russians, you
I'll tell you what
was,
you I'll tell you what you really need to do is you need to make a comic about the Czechoslovak Legion during
Mhm.
World War One and the Russian Civil War. I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
I am not, but we'll
They,
definitely talk about it. I have been one of the things that I've been joking about with my
yeah,
producers is we may wind up creating the anarchist cinematic
yeah,
universe.
do it. Well, the Czechoslovak Legion, no shit, actually, they got sent to Russia as labor during
Mhm.
World War One, and then when the revolution happened, they kind of got stranded, but they were on the railroad and they were armed, so they literally were in like a running shootout across the Trans-Siberian Railroad to Vladivostok and freedom.
Oh jeez, that's incredible.
Yeah, but they're the ones who gave Kolchak to the Bolsheviks for him to be
Mhm.
shot. They're like, we
Hang
just
on
want to
for
leave.
hang on for just a second, by the way.
Yeah.
So, Bobby, where can people find you, by the way?
Oh,
Because
oh,
I sort of promised people to see something cool from
oh,
Durruti.
yeah,
So I'm gonna show something
yeah, do it.
awesome to them. But before I do,
Yeah,
let's
yeah. I'm Mustache Bob 2 on Twitter. I'm Mustache Mafia on YouTube. You can find me there. Uh, yeah, please. I need as many likes, comments, shares, and subscribers as possible because a very small audience right now because I'm just kind of starting out and I don't do as much
Mhm.
regular content as I should. But
Yeah,
please,
you need to make your sacrifice to the streaming gods.
yeah, yeah, Jesus Christ, I know, right?
Yeah.
But please come stop by. I just had a conversation with a fellow veteran about burn pits and the toxic legacy of global war on terrorism. I'm gonna do some talks about education in Florida coming up pretty soon, and then we'll be doing some more book club stuff.
That is cool. All
Yeah.
right. So I am going to show, I'm going to be unveiling the cover
Oh, sweet.
of, now I have a color version of this, but it is locked up at the moment in my Google Drive, which I cannot access for some reason that I do not fully understand.
Uh,
I've got to reach out to my company and be like, what the hell happened?
KGB
Um,
got you.
yeah. And by the way, don't worry, nothing's actually lost. It's just I can't easily access it at the moment. All right. So we have, let's see here. How do I share this? I'm such a boomer. By the way, if anybody's looking for me to debate, especially any ANCAPs, let me know who you want to see me debate. I was thinking of going after Walter Block, but I don't know who to ask for as a partner for him. Possibly might do David D. Friedman if he wants to do it again. But I'm looking for me and possibly Adam something to take some more shots at ANCAP. So if there's an ANCAP that you think would be entertaining to see lock horns with me, let me know.
Like a piece of an ANCAP.
All right, so I am going to share. Oh yeah, they're fun because they're very kooky, and most of them aren't fascists, except for the few of them that are.
I'm just upset with the National Libertarian Party because the Mises Caucus took it over, and I keep getting recommended their tweets about like go buy ammo and shit.
Mm-hmm. Chrome has lost permission to capture my stream.
Bro, what weird illegal Croat websites are you going on, bro?
I have no idea what is going on here.
You have a VPN on?
Yeah, say what? Do
you have a VPN on?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Something with my Chrome and with my work Google account is really weird right now, and I don't know why.
There's no big goose thing.
Yeah. Well, I will figure that out. All right. You know what I'm wondering, actually? I was trying to pay my colorist the other day. I wonder if there's like, because my colorist is Russian. I wonder if suddenly like sanctions.
Are you sanctioned?
I don't know if I'm sanctioned. That would be very annoying if I was.
Bro, you're about to catch that HIMARS, man.
Yeah. Oh God, they're coming. Which is hilarious because if anything, I'm doing a story about Nestor Makhno for fuck's sake.
I'm just saying if you start to hear Five Finger Death Punch coming over the hills, then you're in a little bit of trouble there, brother.
They are the worst.
They were, but they were like the official band, not the official band, but they were like the official band of boot morons in the army for like the whole time I was in. It was that cover of Bad Company.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So hang on, Bobby. Let's see if you can share something.
Yeah, sure. Hold on.
Yeah, because I do want to. Let me see this save image.
Send it to my the DMs that we were having.
Yeah, I'm going to DM it so that people can see it because I'm really excited about this. The coloring is done. We just need to letter the first issue and then get that out. There should be a Kickstarter coming for that in a few months. I'm way behind where I need to be, which is frustrating.
If I get sanctioned, I'm going to be real pissed.
Nah, I don't think so. I already do. Cover. I was actually thinking about, since Makhno is in this, things are still going on in Ukraine. After all of this, like I might look into, sending some of it to like Doctors Without Borders or something to operate and hopefully save some lives. 70,000 Russian lives. My God.
Yeah.
All sacrificed to the vanity of one man.
Yeah, plus about 40% of their operational tanks, a good chunk of their Air Force, and their Black Sea flagship.
Oh yeah, I remember that. The one that bombed Snake Island or whatever.
Yeah, if you want, we could do a whole talk about that sometime. But yeah, the term catastrophic loss scenario had kind of become esoteric, but the Russians are
bringing it back.
Yeah.
Well, what they lost, I think basically two star generals.
No, it's like 7 or 8 generals that they've lost, I think.
Oh wow, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, because
that is amazing, especially when you consider they were supposed to. Everybody thought they were going to plow through the country in like 3 days.
Well, we assumed that they had like combined arms tactics, and they were a parade army, and they tried to parade into Ukraine, and that didn't work out too well.
No, it did not. So we have here from Texan White Panther. So it says, not that I care about FBI agents, but I heard Trump supporters say the FBI is arresting people for disagreeing with them. That's not why the FBI is arresting people. Yeah.
I'm just going to say this. I personally would not ever want any smoke with the culture of gun nuts that invented 10 millimeter, which didn't really catch on for duty pistols, but is popular for bears. That's all I'm going to say about the FBI.
From what I heard, I listened to. I don't know how seriously to take this because it's Bo, but I was listening to Bo of the Fifth Column where he was talking about like the type of intelligence that it seems Trump had. It is holy crap. I mean, like if he's correct, and Bobby, you can tell me, or maybe you can't, but like apparently, like the designation on one of the documents that was either seen or released, the level of like top secret, it's like a document that's so top secret, there is a special room for it, and you're not supposed to be able to even remove it from the room.
Called a SCIF.
Alone SCIF, you said?
Yeah, secure information facility kind of thing.
That was So Trump apparently had at least one document like from a SCIF that I guess he like folded it up and put it in his pocket and was apparently storing them next to the pool.
Yeah, he committed a lot of federal crimes, man. Like if I thought about doing what he did when I left the Pentagon, I would be in prison right now under the Pentagon.
Oh geez. So here's what we've got. We're going to show here. One of my coworkers had a Nestor Makhno book on his desk, an AK press jacket. Awesome. Yeah. I'm a big fan of AK Press. They are very cool.
I missed the press on that, and I was like, bro, like, don't piss off your coworker.
So the things that I've had people say, so we've got, and if anybody wants to super chat now, I'd be happy to take the super chat or just chat normally. I'd love to get some tips for this, because as I said, my projects are a bit behind. But again, I know we don't have a lot of money, any of us, because we're on the left. How much have you looked into the Korean and Japanese anarchists? I'm gonna tell you, they are super interesting and cool. Yeah, I have not looked into them. I have a friend, Japan anarcho-communist, who I think knows more about it than I do. And the stream I did with him is like one of the most popular ones that I've had for a while. So maybe we should have to bring him back on.
I don't know anything really, honestly, about the Korean tradition of anarcho-communism. My knowledge of Korea picks up after World War II, basically, or probably the Machuoko, which not so much.
So now we have from Munda. Thank you, Munda. I heard the comment on Afghanistan. My understanding, the U.S. military leadership didn't even know fully their aims and objectives in Afghanistan.
Yeah, you know what? That's true. There was a whole famous documentary called "This Is What Winning Looks Like," and we've discussed Clausewitz a lot in this series, so I'll reference him again here. Is that Clausewitz says that war is the continuation of politics through other means, meaning violence and war, and kind of he assumes, but you also really have to know what your political goal in a war was. In Afghanistan, our goal kind of changed because initially our goal was explicitly like revenge for 9/11, to destroy Al-Qaeda for 9/11. And when we basically destroyed Al-Qaeda's operational capacity and broke the back of the Taliban in a few months, essentially, it changed to building the nation of Afghanistan, but we weren't sure what that would look like. And we never really decided what it would look like. And nobody in political leadership ever actually wanted to decide what winning looked like. So we kept just basically this occupation of the status quo for almost 20 years in this country, which without ever having like a clear victory goal. Like in World War II, you beat the Nazis when you take Berlin, and you eliminate their ability to resist. The Taliban's ability to resist is predicated on their ability to recruit, which our presence in the country exacerbates, and then especially some like raids and bombings exacerbates, and it just becomes this just colossal, complicated clusterfuck that look up if you have a Google machine in front of you, which I assume you do. Look up the McChrystal chart of what the global war on terror looked like, and it looks like it's a comedy, and it's actually shown in the movie War Machine on Netflix. But that's how complicated this whole thing wound up being. And yeah, you're right. Nobody really knew what winning looked like.
Well, it's the quote from Star Wars, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
Yeah.
I mean, we have evidence of this both in Afghanistan, and we have evidence of it now in Ukraine. that, and ideologically, just like in Spain and, like in Kobani, with the PKK-YPG, a armed and motivated populace is way more powerful than I think any of us have been led to believe. And it's another reason why I think that the anarchist style of organizing is so powerful, particularly like, obviously, you got the democratic confederalism of the PKK-YPG in Kurdistan and Syria. You've got the Zapatistas, who, were militarily defeated, but they still are in control of their territory and run things in their mountains the way they want to, which is awesome. And Subcomandante Marcos shows up frequently to declaim something and then tell everyone that Subcomandante Marcos is dead because he's essentially Mexican Batman.
Oh man.
Sometimes I wonder if they might have taken some inspiration for that with Bane in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I think he was a conglomeration of a lot of different like kind of revolutionary types. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, Christopher Nolan, if you haven't noticed, has some reactionary views, to say the least. He was apparently planning for quite a while to use The Dark Knight Rises to attack the left, in the sense that he wanted to use real footage of people at Occupy Wall Street in The Dark Knight Rises, like siding with Bane and stuff. And like they eventually decided not to do it because they're like, yeah, these kids are in the street and what they're doing is really, really important. And when I first read that, before I kind of started to notice more things about him and about his work, there's an argument that based on The Dark Knight, based on his second Batman film and somewhat of the first, there were, people were for a while arguing that Batman was a fascist or Batman was a neocon, But yeah, so apparently like that was what he wanted to do. And I'm guessing the rest of his production staff talked him out of it, which was really good. But yeah, they basically said, we're just making a movie and what these kids are doing is really important and significant. So we're not going to steal footage of them to put in our movie.
Well, he's also like best friends with Zack Snyder, who's like a Randian lunatic.
Yes. So, this is the weird thing. Okay. Because I love growing up.
Yeah.
There were a number of artists, Zack Snyder being one of them, who, but like another being like, for instance, David Mamet and Christopher Nolan and stuff, that I really liked.
Yeah. And
I read a lot of the stuff that they wrote in such a way, young and naive as I was, I read it as like, consider this perspective. Wouldn't it be fucked up if this were real? Like Oleana. So I don't know if people know about Oleana, but we've been talking about Clarence Thomas lately. There's a 4-parter on Behind the Bastards about him, by the way. Holy shit.
Yeah, he's awful.
He's one of the worst people they've ever done on that show, and they did Hitler and Stalin. But like on the so like anyway, they've been like looking into Clarence Thomas and David Mamet. And I said this online a few years ago, but it was like, if you guys don't know about David Mamet, he's one of the most famous living playwrights in the world. Was huge in the 80s and early 90s. And his play Oleana, I did part of it in college and I really liked it. Again, because my assumption of it was, consider this perspective. Wouldn't it be fucked up if this happened? And I didn't realize until later that the David Mamet's like, no, this is what's happening. This is Anita Hill. So he wrote Oleana as a point where like there is a professor who has a student and helps the student, and then the student baselessly accuses him of sexual harassment in order to forward the goals of her leftist group. And in the head of my theater department was a woman. She was talking to me about like why she didn't like Oleana, because I loved it again. And she was like, well, this woman is stupid. She's cowardly. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I don't really know that. And like, what if we gender flipped it? Could we do Oleana the other way? But the thing is that if you've never seen Oleana, it is it's an entire play that leads up to a older, powerful man who beating the crap out of a woman on stage. And like, usually they go in apparently the Julia Stiles production of it in England when I was in college. Like Julia Stiles from like 10 Things I Hate About You. Like they apparently it was like the Family Guy chicken fight, just wailing on her on stage to get the whole audience applauds, because at this point, like this whole parable, if you're not very cognizant of what he's actually saying and you're just going with the story, he puts you into a position where you would cheer for a man beating up a woman to punish her for accusing him of sexual harassment.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so like similar stuff like with some of the zombie movies and stuff that I saw, like I was like, oh man, yeah, let's apply this thinking to the war on terror. Like, oh, that'd be so fucked up. But like oftentimes a lot of these people, like they're not thinking of it on that level. They're not thinking of it like this is another perspective. This is just their perspective, So like I would say overall, I think one of the things that we have been poisoned by leading up to and beyond, the war on terror is our media. And a lot of, some of it is intentional. It's the military, some of it is just reactionary people getting into positions of power in the artistic, industry. And then some of it is just like people just going along with it because they haven't really thought the thing through. So take advantage of my experience and continue to be critical about art that you consume. And at least know what it's actually saying, or do your best to, because it's good that art disagrees with you. It's good that there is a different perspective put out there. And there is real value in a play like Oleana if it is produced by someone who it doesn't share the particular social values that the playwright unfortunately has. Because, if David Mamet was, if he was like a Zoomer, he would be like on freaking Kiwi Farms or, slash pull slash and like doing like he would be sharing Pepe's and all that crap. So like, yeah, all in all, I would just say like, there are ways to take those ideas and that alternative perspective and use it to broaden our understanding of each other and the world. But like, sometimes, that's not what's happening, good example actually would be, The Dark Knight Rises. I'm talking about that. Like he's basing it on like a tale of two cities, and he's, Christopher Nolan is not giving you an interesting vision. He's like, this is what I think, or at least that is my impression, allegedly. Don't at me.
Yeah. I still want the movie about Bane in jail.
I would watch the hell out of that.
Yeah. Are you gentlemen using those plates? No, Bane, no. Here you go. You're going to eat that cornbread.
Okay, so here's the next one from Texan White Panther. They're doing the same thing they do with Antifa. Antifa beat up people simply for disagreeing with them. Yeah, conservatives, for as much as they pretend to hate victimhood, they are the biggest crybabies and self-serious victims that I have ever seen.
And their intellectual ancestors were the same way. The fascists in Spain, the fascists in Italy, and the fascists in Germany were always like totally towing the victim line narrative constantly.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and by the way, so Bobby, can you pop up the cover for these folks?
I didn't get anything from you, man.
I sent it to you on Facebook.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Okay, something very weird is happening with my computer.
Hold on, let me refresh.
Yeah, because I definitely I see.
No, I see. I just got the link to this.
You just got you don't have anything underneath it?
Nothing.
Oh man, and you know what? It's just ascending.
Try
Okay, I've either got to restart my computer or like something is seriously locking down my system.
You can try it on Twitter if you want.
Yeah. Let's try Twitter. I can. DMs are open. So Bobby, I guess, do you have anything you want to talk about while I'm bringing this up?
Well, okay. If you're local in Florida, make sure you vote in the primary election because we have a serious chance to unseat Ron DeSantis because he's not as popular as the media likes to pretend he is. But the only way we're going to do that is if we nominate Nikki Fried for governor, because the other person running is Charlie Crist, our former Republican governor, who's an anti-choice clown who gave us both Rick Scott and Marco Rubio in office. So again, if you're in Florida or you know anybody in Florida, make sure you tell them to vote in the primary for Nikki Fried. Make sure you're registered to vote for the 2022 midterms. I myself have helped register about 250 new voters in my district. So make sure you're out there. The Democratic Party is far from perfect, and I will yell and scream and cry and stamp my feet about it all the time. You can ask people in my local party. But the Republican Party has basically been taken over. It's become more blatant about being a openly fascist movement that we cannot afford to allow to take power over the world's greatest military and economic superpower. Never mind the country that we all live in. So make sure you're trying to vote as many right-wingers, both in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party, out of office as possible and replace it with a better government.
That is awesome. I'm still looking. So Bobby, where can people find you?
So Mustache Bob 2 on Twitter, and I'm Mustache Mafia on YouTube. If you are Mustache Bob 1 and you are listening to this from Twitter, I need you to find me, and we will meet in New York City under the Silver Cup sign, and we will have a nice little sword fight to figure out who gets to be the one Mustache Bob on Twitter. I have actually never searched for Mustache Bob 1. I should actually do that.
You should see what's going on with that.
Because I keep getting to decapitate him. Okay, I got the photo.
Yeah, I made a Deruti Twitter account for when the second one comes up, and like I had made the account, and then I think I had it open in like 2 browsers or something. So I went to set the name, and it's like, this name is already taken. I'm like, who took the? Oh, I took the name.
It was me. It was me all along. Let's see.
So can you pop that onto the screen?
Yeah. So how do I do that?
So are you on a phone or are you?
I'm on my laptop.
You're on your laptop. So you should be able to, if you go down to these like the settings or like mute, stop cam, there's share next between settings and invite. I may have to give you permission.
Yeah. No, okay. Share screen. Share screen.
Yeah, and then you just select the thing that you want.
Is that good? Can you see
I can't see it.
Well, I'm moused over it. If you add me to the thing, I think it'll show up.
Oh, okay. So let me hang on. Solo layout like this.
I think so.
So you're here.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna scroll back over, but okay. So here I am. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I need to click another button.
You were just trying to get on us Microsoft like this. Because Bobby, you have a condition where you are just a disembodied voice. Here we go.
Is that doing it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. And
we're gonna add to stream. And how do I?
You had me added to the stream. You added me. There you go.
There we go. Yeah. So, and can you zoom in, Bobby?
Sure. Yeah. Let me see. Is that better?
Oh, very good. Hello, Nestor Machno.
Do I scroll down a little bit?
This is the official cover for it. This is Nestor Machno. There's the Tachanka right behind him. And then underneath that, so that is the Black Army of Ukraine, the Revolutionary Insurrection Army that Nestor Machno led, 100,000 strong. and we have now, in his shadow and coming in his wake, we have Buenaventura Durruti right there in the middle. To the left, we have Juan Garcia Oliver, and to the right, our right, we have Francisco Escaso, our three protagonists for Durruti's Shadow of the People. I'm really, really excited about this. Say what?
That's a great cover.
Oh, yeah. This was really great. This is the new guy who's doing the series, Juan. He's actually been sharing some other stuff. So keep an eye on like that on my Instagram. Also, I did want to let people know, and I'm going to put this into the chat. Let's see. Where was I? So this is going into the chat. Oh, good. I'm glad Lowell Hollywood 1F. Really glad you like the cover. I'm putting a link into the chat. If people are able to follow this, I would really appreciate it. So it's in there. I just put it in. It's zoop.gg/c/Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. Zoop is a new website. It's kind of like Kickstarter, except it is explicitly for comics. And here, Bobby, you can take this down because I'm going to see if I can. Oh wait, no, I can't share my screen. But if you guys go to that, put in your email address to be notified. What'll happen is that I'm going to be running a small campaign to do a special edition of Snow White Zombie #0. This is a prequel, also called Reign of the Blood-Covered King, involving Prince Charming, Charming's father, the eponymous blood-covered king, and also Jack the Giant Killer. Who you see there on the cover. If you go, you'll see him on the cover. He's got a big 7-in-1 blow sash. But yeah, this is going to hit comic stores in October. So if you don't have the money to support the Kickstarter and get a copy, you can either get a digital one or wait to get one in the stores. But this is a special edition one that I am putting out first. There's only going to be probably a few hundred printed. So if you want like a really cool keepsake, you can grab that Swaza #0. And please do like share it, send it around. The more people that follow the campaign beforehand, like the better it will, the higher it will be ranked in the site's algorithm, like on Kickstarter. And then this will also really be helpful because I'm trying to open up Durruti and Swaza to new audiences. And so Zoop, I'm going to be doing some stuff, and I'm hoping to also do some stuff with Indiegogo. But yeah, so that's what we got. It's been a little over 2 hours. So do you have anything, Bobby?
That's it. I've plugged myself a couple times, plugged the governor's race going on down here, plugged not getting COVID-19. Make sure you get vaccinated, wear masks, don't live in Florida where we just infect people left, right, and sideways. Be careful because we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah, there was
don't
something.
Look at doorknobs.
Yeah, there was something that I wanted to show here as well. Yeah. So Likely Lad, and actually, by the way, I love your handle and everything, Likely Lad. So you had said, I think it was you that had said that something about Stalinism essentially being political opportunism. But the point is, Leninist revisionism is not the left wing, but an alternative right wing. So it's not infighting; it's fighting another faction who oppose actual socialism. That can be true. I think, you were talking, Bobby, about, because you were talking about, I think, Has.
Oh, like last time we were talking, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I haven't really had a run-in with him other than him refusing to partner with me against Stefan Molyneux. And I know he went after Luna Oy. I will say, as far as so Marx Leninism, I would say, not just simply Leninist revisionism, but Marx Leninism, there's definitely some worrisome things in that ideology in a lot of ways, though I will also say I have been for the longest time really impressed with Vietnam. Like even before I got involved in like online leftist spaces when I was just doing my normie political stuff. Like Vietnam has managed to function pretty well as a Marx-Leninist country. So I wouldn't sell all of that ideology up the river, but I think there is definitely, especially like with where Russia is now, there's definitely a current of extreme right with leftist aesthetics.
Well, it tends to kind of wind up being a historical cul-de-sac, which you can definitely see in the terms of the USSR. Like Lenin did lead them forward, but he led them into a cul-de-sac that had a dead end, which kind of came to pass in 1991. Vietnam, is kind of an exception to that, but they've modified their Marxism-Leninism, to not be as like or not be Stalinism, or not to be like orthodox Leninism from 1921. Because they realized they're living in 2022 and they've made adjustments. I always say like people like Marx would be furious at people like viewing capital as like a sacred text that can't be deviated from, like 150 years after it was written. So just you should learn from the past, but you shouldn't be bound by it at the same time.
I definitely would agree with that. There was, let's see, who else do we have? What are your thoughts on the Trump FBI raid? Do we need to defund the FBI?
I mean, like, yeah, should we like defund like law enforcement? Are they like ridiculously overfunded? Yeah, I mean, like the FBI is this like sprawling international agency, and some of its functions. Some of its functions are necessary at this point, and you're probably never going to defund them all the way. Like, counter espionage is used against leftists famously, but it's also used against like the FSK and the MSS. So that's never going to be defunded. The thing that we have to realize is that the right wingers who are saying that they want to defund the FBI don't want to defund the FBI to get rid of like a corrupt law enforcement body. They want to defund the FBI and replace it with like a Gestapo. This is like the same thing in like Weimar, where like the Nazis wanted to replace the police with the Gestapo and the SS, which they did. So this is like they're not your friends in this. And I think it's always good to arrest corrupt former presidents. I think we should do it more often.
I definitely think so. I really think that I was pretty certain that Trump was going to walk after everything that he did.
Too, really.
Yeah, because like I was like, if they're not going to get him for January 6th, they're not going to get him for anything. But it seems like January 6th set something in motion. And people have been trying to pitch Ron DeSantis. So here's my question, because you lived under DeSantis.
I lived in his former congressional district, brother. I actually yelled at his aide when I lived in DC because they forgot to give me a White House pass when my parents visited.
Great. So DeSantis, this is my feeling on it, because he's trying very hard to be the new Trump. I also get the feeling that there kind of can't be a new Trump. Trump is a very singular type of person, in much the same way that like there can't be a new Obama in the Democrats. I feel like Trump has charisma, and I'm not sure if DeSantis does. What's your feeling on that?
I don't think that these Trump loyalists, that Chapo Trap House popularized the term Torgo again from Manifest the Hands of Fate. I think that's actually kind of apt. But these Trump ghouls, they won't abandon him for anything, man. Like they're out in the streets like waving Trump flags. There's people wearing MAGA hats today. There's no one wearing a DeSantis hat. DeSantis is using like the same ideological rhetoric that Trump did. Ideological rhetoric is so generous for saying what Trump did. Same fascist rantings that Trump did, in the same way that the Republican Party essentially adopted Reaganism after Reagan. But Trump is like still alive and still has as much faculties as he did when he was president, which is to say not much, but enough to rant for like a couple hours during a speech. They won't abandon him. And even if he gets arrested and goes to jail,
he can still run from jail.
Eugene Debs did actually do that.
He got a huge amount of votes.
Yeah, there's no law that says he can't be president. And the other thing that I want people to take into account electorally is that literally everyone who voted for Donald Trump in 2020 is going to do it again in 2024. And they're going to do it in 2022 as well. So you need to like vote, and you need to organize mutual aid to minimize the effects of that ideology on you and your friends and your communities accordingly to that. And these people are going to keep voting the same way in every election for the rest of your life. So you have to live with that reality, and you have to kind of do your politics accordingly.
Yeah,
But
Trump,
I don't think DeSantis will beat Trump in a primary. I
no.
think DeSantis will beat 2028.
So I guess if Trump does go, Trump will definitely run again. His ego won't let him do that. So even if he is running from jail, with what's come out, you're right. His supporters won't abandon him for the most part, because at this point it's a cult. Though also I will mention that a number of people, or at least some big people in my life, did not continue to follow Trump in 2020. They voted for him in 2016. They were like in that Trump cult, up until 2019, and then in 2020 they voted right libertarian, which thank God.
Joe Jorgensen. Okay.
Yeah, they voted Joe Jorgensen in swing states.
Maybe the Forward Party will save us from another Trump term.
Yeah, I really hope so. Because first off, the guy is an absolute idiot and monster.
That's a disaster.
Yeah, and if he gets in, I don't know if American democracy will be able to hold up to a second term Donald Trump. I think, with January 6th, we got oddly closer than anybody should have.
We got extremely lucky.
Yeah. So that's my thought on the FBI. As far as defund, so what's important to know about like the defund the police argument, that's not like an anarchist argument. It's more of a liberal one. And the reason people are saying defund the police is not because they want to eliminate the state. They are saying defund the police because the police union is so powerful that even if a populace elects like a mayor specifically to bring the police to heel and to have them stop killing Black people for no reason, they can't do it. They can't get rid of problem officers like Chauvin because the police union is so strong. The only way to get around that is to defund them. And Camden, New Jersey, I think it was, they didn't just defund, they abolished their police and then built a new police force from scratch, and it worked. So, that's the rare case that a slogan is significantly less radical than it sounds on its face. Now, should we... I would be in favor of eliminating the state and aspects of the state, but only if we have, through mutual aid, been able to build parallel structures that will keep people safe and fed and medicated, that will keep society running without the government and the state. Until we can do that, and until we can do that without, exposing ourselves to conquest, I think the most important thing that anarchists can do is build the movement and build and engage in mutual aid and community outreach. And, when it is necessary and tactical, vote. For the love of God, vote. I am not so naive that I believe that the wealthy will ever allow us to, vote away their wealth, just like they won't allow us to ever buy away their wealth or anything. They're never going to give this up, voluntarily. So what we have to do is find a way to cut them out of the equation, and to do it in a way that, is effective, just, and peaceful. So that's my opinion overall on it. Sometimes people on the left, I've noticed this, it's like they will attack your radical cred if you don't want to murder all your political opponents, like right now. And I really feel like that current is very, very toxic for reasons we've already gone into.
Yeah.
So let's see what we got here.
From a little bit of a lib perspective, my town had 2 murders over the last 2 years, and our sheriff's department just bought an MRAP, which is a mine-resistant assault vehicle, basically. So maybe they're a little overfunded, and they could use some. Yeah,
Okay, so the reason for that, by the way, is the military-industrial complex. It's capitalism.
Yeah.
One of the only things what's important to understand is modern monetary theory. The idea here is that essentially a government can print as much money as it wants without causing inflation, so long as there are enough goods and services to spend that money on. Inflation happens when money is printed and the economy is not growing, which is what happened because of COVID, which is why inflation hit so hard eventually when people started spending money. Bunch of money was printed, injected into the system. There was not enough shit to buy with it, so people first stockpiled it, and then when they started, buying stuff, the value of our currency went down. If they had just printed all that money and thrown it into the economy without COVID, we would not be dealing with inflation today, and I think the country would be far better off. So that's like one thing to really understand. I got thrown by a super chat here, or by a regular chat here, so I want to pull this up from Munda. Are there issues with authoritarianism in Vietnam? I haven't followed anything closely there, but other than the Vietnam War, and I know that they have decent government programs and a social safety net. So EJ, American Johnson, who I like a lot, he lives there, and he has talked about, they have, I forget the Vietnamese word for it, but they essentially have a word for like, yeah, this is the rule, but we're not going to follow it. Vietnam has been inherently an anti-authoritarian culture for its entire existence as a country. They were conquered and occupied by the Chinese for like 500 years. And then after the Chinese, it was the French. And after the French, it was the Japanese. And then it was the French again. And then it was the Americans. And, now they're doing their thing. It's also really important to know that like Ho Chi Minh, and I genuinely think one of the reasons why Vietnam does not have the level of creeping authoritarianism and political massacres that other communist nations have had to deal with is because the culture and the character of the Vietnamese, again, these are people who don't like being told what to do and will take steps to avoid that. Also, what's really important is like, Ho Chi Minh lived in the United States. He based large sections of political policy, like based on stuff like the Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution. There was a long period where people prior to the CIA, like the OSS, were writing memos like, hey, this Ho Chi Minh guy, he's a communist, but he could be a ally against China at the time. And,
the French threatened to leave NATO, though.
Yes. And that was what turned everything around on it. Because, we need the French in NATO. Who will surrender for us?
Well, I think it is also kind of worthy to note that Freedom House does rank Vietnam as not free. I think they got like a 20 out of 100 on their Liberty score from that NGO. So there is a single party state. Yeah. So I mean, like it's not as bad as like say the USSR was, but it's not a liberal democracy necessarily either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That said, EJ, he seems.
I have absolutely no problem with EJ or his wife, and I'm sure their perspectives are much more informed on this issue than mine is.
Yeah. One of the things that a friend of mine mentioned to me when we were kind of talking about China, and this is one of the, if it's true, this is one of the better things about China, because it was like it's a one-party state, so like, how exactly are the people in control of the means of production in China? That doesn't seem to make sense if the government runs everything and it's a one-party state. What he argued to me, and I don't know if it's true, but what he argued to me was essentially the way is that the Communist Party works to try to get as many people in the country into the party, and if they're in the party, you know, their voice is heard, essentially, kind of the Dengist version of join the Democrats and change them from within. But you know, Bernie has been fairly successful in certain ways with that. So what's your feeling on that, Bobby?
I would have to look more about how they recruit into the Chinese Communist Party, because that's not what I had heard, but I don't have a empirical like data.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, guys, this is just something like one communist I know told me. So, you know,
I'd look in. I personally would have to look into it before I gave you my opinion more, because I don't know.
Yeah, so we have this here, and I'm going to be checking this. Check out Veritas at Catitas, Anarchist Perspectives on Vietnam. The regime is off and very dogmatic. That's unfortunate. Mio Moon are Vietnamese anarchists. There's an article about the regime by them. Thank you, Likely Lad. I will definitely check that out. One of the things that I always kind of remember is like I try to be as charitable, like with tanks, at least the ones that aren't completely insane, you know, because I always remember that when the anarchists were expelled by the Marxists from the Third International, I think it was Otto von Bismarck who remarked that the crowned heads of Europe will quake with fear if ever again the black and red reunite. I don't know if there's a possibility of that. Orwell doesn't think there is. He thinks we're usually initially allies because we share something of a goal. But the anarchist's perspective is always on freedom and autonomy. And the Marxist or Marx-Leninist perspective is all on centralization and efficiency. So, you know, arguably, we may be too different to function together, but also I'm not someone who believes that the past will always repeat itself.
Yeah. I don't think there's much left of the red, to be honest with you. I think there's more of you guys than there are of the Marxist-Leninists at this point.
Yeah.
Even in Europe, I think most of the like formerly like communist parties have basically become social democratic after the Cold War.
Thank you, Moonday. It was the Second International. The third was pushing. You know, it's weird. Like my brain always skips over the second. I think it's because I think in rule of three. So it had to be the third. Yeah, it's
a catchy song.
Say what?
It's a catchy song.
Yeah, Le International. Oh, I love that. All right, well, guys, thank you all very much. This has been incredible. We're on 2.5 hours, so I've got some writing to do. I have the Kickstarters to work on. I got to figure out what the hell is wrong with my Google account. So
you've been sanctioned, bud. You're going to jail.
I'm really hoping, out of all the ways they could sanction me, attack my Gmail.
Get your mind right. You just been drafted. You're going to war troop.
Yeah, I swear to you, if I am being sanctioned, that's ridiculous. Because if anything, I am extolling the anti-Soviet Ukraine by creating a comic that features very strongly Nestor Makhno. Yeah. All right, well, you guys have a wonderful time, and hopefully, if you don't see me, I have been sanctioned. All right, I will catch you all later, and yeah. Keep sifting the reasonable from the unreasonable, as James on Modern Day Debate likes to say. Keep making the argument for a better, saner, more compassionate world. And I will catch you all on the flip side. Peace.